Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are running for the 50th District State Representative seat.
Sure. So I like to tell a couple of little stories about myself to kind of illustrate why I'm running for office, because I think it really kind of shows the point a little bit better. So I grew up in rural Alabama in a military family. My dad served 20 years in the Air Force, so service to my country and service to my community has always been a part of who I am since I was a small child. And the community that we grew up in was a small rural town that was really close-knit. So that when my brothers and I would go out riding our bicycles in the neighborhood, my parents knew that the greatest danger that we faced were a couple of mean dogs in the back of the neighborhood that could be handled with a pocket full of rocks just in case, because they knew that every other adult in that neighborhood was watching out for us. Because our community was our family, and especially when you grow up in a military family, that's so important to have that strength of community, to be there to support you when you're living so far away from your birth family, from your relatives and grandparents and everything else. And so that has always been something that is important to me, is finding that close-knit community and being able to be a productive part of my community. So after graduating from college, I worked for the federal government for a while, and I worked in private industry, and I realized there was more that I could offer to my community. So I went back to school and I got my law degree at Washington University in St. Louis, and I took a job with the Missouri Senate in the Nonpartisan Research Office after graduation, thinking that I was going to have this great opportunity to help both Democratic and Republican senators write good bills that worked well and solved real problems for people in our community. And the very first assignment that I got was exactly that. It was a constituent question that a senator had no idea what to do with, so they sent it down. They said, figure it out, find something, fix it. I thought, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to solve real people's problems. But that was about the only assignment like that I ever got, because after that, session started, and then lobbyists came. And that was about the only assignments that ever came across my desk were ones that were hand-delivered to me by big corporate lobbyists, sometimes even still with their logo on the top, like ALEC, which is the American Legislative Exchange Council, funded by the Koch brothers, where it even still had insert state here in it. So they hadn't even taken the time to make it fit for Missouri. And so I got one of those bills in one time where, being a good public servant, because that was my job, I reviewed the whole thing to make sure that it was going to work the way that it was intended to work. And I found a federal law citation in there that was wrong. It went to nowhere. So I fixed it, made the bill where it was going to do exactly what they wanted it to do. It passed through the Senate, it went to the House, and when it came back to the Senate again, that incorrect citation was back in the bill because the lobbyist over on the House side noticed that that wasn't exactly what they asked for. And that was when I realized that the senators whose names are on those bills and the state reps whose names are on those bills didn't really own those bills. It was the lobbyists who were pushing for them that owned those bills, and they expected to get exactly what they asked for. And that was really disheartening to see, especially since so much of the legislation that gets passed down in Jeff City is really picking winners and losers in our economy instead of helping to make it fair, so both big companies and small companies and our regular citizens can actually thrive and do well. And they won't even admit that that's what they're doing. I had another bill that came in across my desk that had the name of the company that was being targeted for overregulation. And got it ready, it went up onto the floor, and the sponsor of the floor was speaking on the bill, and another senator asked, hey, wait a minute, is this bill about loser company? And the sponsoring senator said, no, of course not. And it took everything I had in me to not stand up and say, liar! You know what you're doing with this bill. You know that you're picking one company to lose in our state, to not be able to serve our citizens. And that's when I knew that I couldn't stay and I couldn't support that kind of environment. And so I knew I wanted to get involved, that if we were going to make change, it had to be from the bottom up. So I joined the local Boone County Democratic Central Committee to start looking to change how we do things in Boone County and how we do things in sending people to Jeff City, to make sure that we have people that are really here to serve our communities, because I love Boone County. My husband and I moved here about 5 years ago to unincorporated rural Boone County. We live off of a gravel road on 5 acres on the south side of town. I love it because I raise free-range chickens. My neighbors have honeybees, and 2 houses down they have dairy goats. So I have this really great neighborhood swap arrangement where we swap eggs for goat milk and honey, and my kids love it because they get to grow up close to where their food comes from, which is amazing. My son, who's 4, his favorite way to drink goat milk is about 5 minutes fresh out of the goat, still warm. It's a little weird for me, but that's how he likes it, and that's because he's had that opportunity to be there to milk the goat and be so excited about that's where his milk is coming from. And so that's that close-knit community that I've been looking for, and I love my community here in Boone County. So much so that my neighbors with the dairy goats, they were planning a trip out of the country for 2 weeks. And they had a brand new baby goat that had been born just about a week before they were supposed to leave. They had a house sitter all set up and ready to go that they were going to pay to come out and take care of their farm animals. And 2 days before they were supposed to leave, they got a call that she had broken her arm. And they knew that there was no way she could take on the amount of work that was going to be necessary for that brand new baby goat kid. So I got a phone call from my neighbor. I know it's super last minute, but is there any way you can take this baby goat? And my immediate answer was, of course, because that's what neighbors do. We're there to fill in the gaps when there's an emergency or where there's a need. And that's how I ended up with a baby goat in a crate in my dining room, because that's what we do for each other. And that's why I'm running for state representative. I want to see our state legislature be a part of our community, be there to fill in the gaps when there's a need, but help to lift up everyone in our community to make sure that we're all successful together.
Every year at the annual legislative reception, the Columbia Chamber releases an agenda and priority card that contains priorities voted on by our membership for the year. What are your priorities, and what do you want to accomplish?
So there are a couple of really big things that I would like to see accomplished here in mid-Missouri and across the state. The first is making sure that our economy is operating fairly for everyone. Right now, there's so much benefit that goes to big multinational and multi-state corporations that our local businesses don't get to take advantage of. And it really puts them at a great disadvantage. At the same time, I want to see all of our workers get paid a living wage so that they have an opportunity to spend money on the high quality products that are offered by our local businesses instead of only just barely having enough money to buy cheap Chinese made goods from Walmart or other big multinational corporations. I want to see them be able to shop down at Root down here in downtown Columbia, or be able to take their families out to dinner and support our local economy. And so those are really big things for me, making sure that our economy is fair and it works for workers as well as our local businesses. The other big thing is to make sure that we are continuing to invest in our future by investing in our education system, both from pre-K, K to 12, and our higher education system, which is especially important here in mid-Missouri because the University of Missouri is such a huge economic driver for our local economy, but it's also really important for the rest of the state. I mean, it's the crown jewel of our higher education system. And a lot of people move to Missouri because they want to be able to send their kids to Mizzou and pay in-state tuition and have that great opportunity for their kids, because Mizzou for such a long time has been such a respected institution. And so we have to support them.
Of the issues the Chamber advocates on behalf of, there are 3 that have been a major focus for our membership: advocating for funding that will benefit the airport and new terminal construction, protecting state funding for the University of Missouri, and funding that would allow for the Inland Research Reactor to expand education and training. Where do you stand on these 3 issues? And if you are supportive, how would you advocate to advance these priorities?
Sure. So the first one about supporting funding for the University of Missouri, we already kind of touched on. And so we've seen the last couple of years continued budget crises because we don't have enough money in the state budget to fund all of the projects that we would like to fund. And I think a big piece of what's missing in that conversation is we're not talking about how do we grow revenue. It's always about what programs get cut, and the University of Missouri had to take a 9% cut this year, which is huge. I mean, it's so huge. We laid off hundreds of employees, which is not helpful for our local economy. And so much of that lost revenue is big corporate tax cuts that have been put into place since 2007, 2008, which at the time may be a good idea because the economy was in free fall. We had big economic collapse all across the nation and across the world. But if you look at the Dow Jones now or NASDAQ, all of the big corporations, they're doing just fine. We have historic highs. And so we need to get back to where they're paying their fair share of being part of our communities. And so rolling back some of those big corporate tax cuts, particularly the last one that seemed to surprise everyone with how much it cost, because there was a loophole for multi-state companies to be able to pay less in taxes, and which really puts a heavier burden on, again, on our local communities, on our local businesses that don't have that same benefit. And it really starts to hollow out particularly our smaller communities around town. Columbia itself is vibrant enough that it has ability to kind of weather some of those storms, but a lot of the smaller communities around aren't as fortunate. And then for the nuclear reactor, again, that would be a huge boon to the whole state of Missouri, not just to Columbia, and it's something that we should be investing in. But again, with the way that our budget is, when we're not talking about growing revenue, it would be faced with tough choices. Do you cut school lunch programs, or do you cut more benefits for seniors to receive prescription drug benefits, which are vital to their survival? And so I don't think there is room in the way that the current budget is set up to be able to cut those essential services, to be able to fund that, which is why I think we really need to be looking at increasing state revenue so that we can fund these great projects to grow. And then the last one was the airport. And I think that the way that we have set that up to do that public-private partnership so far has been really great, because the special tax on lodging is really something that is directly correlated to the amount of traffic that's brought in by the airport, and it doesn't put any real additional burden on our local communities. So I think that's a great way that we've worked on that. From what I have read, it looks like there's probably about another $8 million funding gap to be able to do that project. And so I would like to see continued private investment in the airport, and if we continue that public-private partnership, I would just want to make sure that any additional funds that come from public funds aren't things that are going to hurt our community's ability to take care of other infrastructure needs. And so things like TIFs or direct taxes on the full population of either the county or of Columbia, I don't think would be in the best interest of the people that live here, because we have so many other big projects like the sewer system and stormwater systems in the first ward that are continuing to be underfunded and not finished because we don't have the funds to do them. Or you have sewage backups in downtown Columbia, again, because we're not investing in that infrastructure. And so we need to take care of those immediate needs with those broad-based taxes. But if there is, leave the sunset a little bit longer maybe on that lodging tax to make up that gap. And again, with additional private financing, I think is a great option to grow the airport.
Tell us one thing the general public might not know about you.
One thing that the general public might not know about me, and so I have already told my story about the chickens, because that's something that's a little bit interesting. But my husband is a proud Mizzou grad. He went to the University of Missouri, the journalism school, and so we look forward to sending our kids there someday as well. Something else, I guess, so my dad served 20 years in the Air Force, but my mom also served 3. And so I actually come from a family that has a long, proud history of military service. I had 2 uncles that served in the Army, one in Vietnam, and then my grandfather actually served in World War II. And so being there and supporting our veterans, I'm so proud that Columbia is expanding the shelter for homeless veterans here in town, because that's something that we often gloss over, is how do we help our veterans? And that's so important to me as an individual, because it hits so close to home with my family, making sure that we have those supports for veterans when they come back from war, because that's a tough place to be.
In closing, tell us why the voters should support you.
So voters should support me because I'm qualified for this position in 2 different ways. I really have a great educational background to be able to do the job well and to know what I'm doing as soon as I get there. I have a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's in public administration and policy analysis, a law degree, and 3 years of experience working drafting bills for the Missouri Senate. But more than that, I have my personal experience and my life background, and my love for my community makes me a good choice to serve as state representative. because I know what it's like to struggle. When you grow up in a military family with an enlisted serviceman, a stay-at-home wife, and 3 kids, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in those kinds of family budgets. You know, we ate a lot of peanut butter and a lot of bologna because that's what we could afford to do. And I've had a Social Security number required paying job since I was 15 and babysat for several years before that. And so hard work is something that has always been a part of me and who I am, and I want to work hard for my community. And I really just want to see all of our kids have just as good of opportunities to succeed as my parents had, and make sure that folks that reach retirement age can actually retire at a reasonable age so that they can, with some security, so that they can enjoy their golden years with their grandchildren and being active members of the community instead of having to work until they're 80 or worry about bankrupting their families because of medical costs.